Welcome to the program. I am Felicity Ezewike. Today we are discussing another handshake, another roadmap. This time it's in Switzerland after 5 days of talks between the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Rwanda-backed M23 alliance. But we've been here before. For context, Eastern Congo has been at war in one form or the other for 3 decades. M23 relaunched its rebellion in 2022 and by early 2025 had seized the cities of Goma and Bukavu. Congo and Western governments accused Rwanda of arming the group. Rwanda denies this, pointing instead to the FDLR, a rival armed group it says still operates on Congolese soil. Since then, 2 separate peace agreements have been running side by side. The Washington Accords of 2025 between Congo and Rwanda and the Doha Framework of November same year, 2025, between Congo and M23 directly. So what's new? The 2 sides have agreed a timetable for further negotiations, and they're relying on a joint ceasefire watchdog to check who is actually keeping their word. That watchdog was set up months ago, but it's only now on its first mission in a highland town called Minembwe in South Kivu. The catch here is that of 8 major issues the 2 sides need to resolve for a full peace deal, only 3 have actually been agreed so far: a prisoner exchange, the ceasefire itself, and the humanitarian access. Sanctions on M23, the release of remaining detainees, and the timing of political reform are all still unresolved. And even as we're talking about all of this, even as this roadmap was being announced, M23 publicly accused government-aligned forces of carrying out drone strikes on the same town the verification mission was headed to, a claim that we, though, cannot independently verify. Meanwhile, the human cost keeps climbing. Millions remain displaced, and some of the world's most valuable mineral wealth lies beneath this conflict. We have cobalt, lithium, gold. So, our question that will frame our conversation is this roadmap a genuine turning point or just the next chapter in a cycle this region has lived through many times before? Obliging us for this discussion, we have Isaac Asare.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Thank you for being with us. He is the founder and president, Association of Conflict, Peace and Security Experts in Africa. He joins us from Accra, Ghana. We also have Modesti Nkurukiyimana. He is a journalist. He joins us from Switzerland, where that roadmap was agreed upon. Also joining this conversation, we have Dr. Abigail Mupambi, Global Affairs Analyst. She joins us from Harare in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here with us. I'll start with you, Isaac, to frame this contest. We've had the Washington Accords with Rwanda. We've had the Doha Framework with M23 itself. And now we have this new roadmap out of Switzerland. What is genuinely new here? Or is this simply another document with a fresh date on it?
Okay, thank you so much. I think we must be optimistic about what has taken place for now and being hopeful that it can work. But what I was surprised not to see is not seeing Rwanda and also Uganda on the table. I was expecting to see them on the table because they have a lot of influence when it comes to this issue, because when it comes to the major issue that is going on the eastern part of DRC is not always about what we see as the ethnic conflict. It's majority about citizenship that brought the conflict in Rwanda. The same way it's interfacing in the eastern part of the DRC. And I was hoping to see Uganda and Rwanda on the table so that all this roadmap, they can also be on the table to agree on certain things and how they can have shared security. Because this roadmap, although it is reinforcing what they had in Doha, which is to make sure that they have sequence timelines, they have verification, and also to have field mission. And now they didn't have a secretariat, which is now a good thing for them to have a secretariat place to report to and to make sure that when where to get information and where to monitor and where to make sure that we have all our information here at this particular secretariat, who is responsible for what. So it is a good thing, which I'm optimistic about, and we hope that they can be able to lead through. But one particular thing that we have to hope for is that parties should be able to trust each other, because in every conflict situation, when there is no trust, and if parties are also unwilling to compromise on certain issues, it will be difficult to have a solution that works for all of them. And if you are not careful, the solution can be a basis for another conflict situation to occur again. So that would be my first take.
Okay, I understand we have Nixon Katembo. He's an analyst joining us from Great Lakes and East Africa. He's an analyst of the Great Lakes and East Africa, joins us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you very much for obliging us for today's conversation. I'll jump to you, Modeste, because you are a journalist and you are on the ground. Is there something more you can tell us about this current arrangement that makes it different from previous arrangements? We know that none of the previous arrangements have stopped the fighting. So what more can you tell us about this new roadmap, being on the ground where the roadmap was announced?
Thank you for having me. Actually, there is nothing new about what happened currently in Switzerland. The only thing new is that there was the presence of the United States, which was not mandatorily present by the time of Doha. Otherwise, there was also the confirmation. The only thing that actually they confirmed is the confirmation of the extended joint verification mechanism, plus, which will be under the supervision of the extended joint verification mechanism and the facilitations of the MONUSCO. Simply that. Otherwise, it remains the same. And what they only did is that they again accepted to go back to the roadmap of Doha. Simply that. So there's nothing actually new in what happened currently in Switzerland.
Okay, let's bring in Dr. Mupambi. The joint statement talks about sequenced steps and timelines. And for a lot of persons, this sounds quite organized. But is a timeline worth anything if there is no penalty for missing it?
Thank you so very much. I think I want to concur a bit with one of my colleagues there. The issue of timeline can only be as useful to the extent that probably we may locate how truthful it is. Are there consequences for not meeting a particular schedule and the timelines and in particular deliverables? If there are such consequences, who is responsible for doing what, for holding which party accountable? Otherwise, if there is no clear consequences to such, then it will be as good as another probably schedule moved forward. Analyzing the broader Switzerland roadmap, I foresee that this particular roadmap is actually taking us a step ahead from Doha and probably from the Washington. Washington was more of that higher level, and now the Switzerland is taking us to the ground. And I think probably we may be optimistic and probably give them a little more chance to see on the implementation side. But where we need to worry much is what have we done different? These were diplomatic talks, diplomatic handshakes. Now we are at the roadmap. ahead, particularly putting a secretariat and beginning to say we are implementing. I think what is more important at the end of the day is to go on the ground and make sure that the East and the West, talking about the people-to-people relationships, are actually weaved to some extent. Because as things stand right now, we may be in the boardrooms celebrating some handshakes, but the ground is torn. The ground is far apart. And I think what mechanisms are there on the ground to make sure that the issue of trust is dealt with, the issue of building confidence in these instruments is again attended to, and there has to be consequences. This looks much a bit advanced. It's just a step ahead of Doha, but not very, very much probably. It may not guarantee us a result of it. We may need probably to look maybe closely, maybe monitor closely, and probably check 2 months, 3 months, 6 months down the line. But I think it is quite a fragile one at the moment. It really looks like a fragile one.
Isaac wants us to hold a bit more optimism, you know, with these roadmaps and with this arrangement, considering how complex the whole thing is. In my introduction, I talked about the fact that there are other areas. Think about 8 issues that needed to be resolved, but only 3 have been resolved so far. Let's bring in Nixon and just put you on put you on. In the very days that this roadmap was announced, we heard that M23 publicly accused the government-aligned forces of airstrikes in the place where the verification mission was heading to. Talk to us about this timing and what it tells us about how seriously either side is treating this process, this effort at peace.
I think let me begin by saying that's one thing to sign to have a roadmap and sign agreements, but it's another thing to pass on the implementation of those agreements and actually the actualization of the roadmap. And I think both my co-interlocutor in these discussions have said quite a mouthful. But if you look at the historical perspective of the region, in the Great Lakes as a whole, and including the current M23, you would see that discussion of such a nature and the signing of agreement has been used a launchpad to demonstrate a lack of political willingness on either side, either of the rebel or government on the other side. And also that then can be used an excuse for further skirmishes between the rebels and government. And I think one have to be extremely cautious on where it is heading, while we see that the U.S. is bringing these parties together in Geneva, Switzerland, based on the Doha Agreement. At the same time, there are geostrategic dynamics that are happening in the Great Lakes region, where just recently, about a week or 2 weeks ago, a bipartisan congressional delegations was in Kigali and signed certain agreement that one could have not understood that this agreement would be signed between Kigali and Washington at the time when Washington is putting pressure on Kigali. And in my view, perhaps those congressional delegation members have been used as ambassador for Kigali's message that, look, we are not only the problem, but we are part of the larger issues that happen in Congo. And it is not surprising that the M23 is going in Switzerland at this time, while there are skirmishes in areas of South Kivu, some talking about going even towards Tanganyika. And in my view, I think they might use this space even to further their ambition in going further in provinces like the Tanganyika. There have been talks of taking up the Katanga. So in my view, this comes as a sort of a cover for what is coming up, because what you say that the M23 was, launching some sort of skirmishes around where the verification mechanism is going to happen, that is quite telling.
Isaac, let me come back to you. I mean, again, I go back to the fact that there are 8 issues here. Only 3 has been talked about. Can this roadmap truly succeed when there are still disagreements? I mean, strong issues like the timing of political reforms, nobody has talked about that. They've talked about, we have humanitarian access, the release of remaining detainees, but the timing of this political reform has not been talked about. So that's where I wanted you to come in.
Currently, there is no major political reforms when it comes to the integration of all this, especially with the M23. They're willing to become a political party where they can be, some of them, their military be integrated into the army, and also when they can be able to hold specific offices and other things. Those areas have not been negotiated, and discussions has not been held on. And that is where the challenge is going to be, because if you are, now they are discussing on the top level, when you go to the local level, there are ethnic dimension, there are different communities that are involved. So when you are going into that sec, who is going to govern who, and what are the recognitions within those areas? And when it comes to DRC, when it comes to the eastern part, their citizenships is a little bit also dicey, where some people are not even recognized as part of the DRC people. Some people are also recognized as part of the DRC people. All these discussions needs to be on the table, and who is a legitimate person to be able to lead in a particular community or local province or whichever. So if these discussions are not held properly, then it will be difficult to have the political integration and to make sure that there is enough political representation. Because you can have, for now, maybe as they have shake hands in the room and everybody is happy, they can have a negative piece where maybe there is no infighting anymore, but the tension will still be there. So there is the need to build the peace from the local communities. So there is the need, I think they have done some before in the past where they set up local peace committees. So there is a need for them to revisit that again and see what worked, what didn't work, so that they can begin to build the community level peace from the bottom up, because you cannot do this without also not recognizing the internally displaced people, the refugees who have crossed the borders. How do you make sure that the place becomes safe so that these people can now return back to their homes? Because they cannot return back when there is still active fighting. Don't forget that in the eastern part, there are over 120, according to a report by the African Center for Strategic Studies, there is over 120 people, 120 armed groups that are fighting within. So you may see that this part is supporting the government side, this part is also fighting to support the M23, and also the Rwanda coming in with saying that they are also protecting their borders from having the other forces for liberation of Rwanda coming into their country. All these dynamics comes into place. So there is a need to for them to do proper negotiation. Now, the first step has been taken. If I have not seen the report on the outcome of the monitoring from yesterday, if we are able to see that there was a good outcome from yesterday, then the other negotiation can go on where they can now discuss. That is where the challenge is going to be. But when it comes to political integration, are the M23 also allowed to stand any position that they want within the country, and will the country recognize their legitimacy in the region? These are the things that I think they need to agree on it. And also, when you were talking about freeing of detainees, yes, they have freed some of them, but there are some who are still, do they have to go through some level of a prosecution process, or they have to just sign off and release them? All these dynamics will come into play, and they have a long way to go. This is the first step that they have taken. Maybe with the involvement of the US now, we may see certain progress. So that is why earlier I said that I'm
but this is not a
optimistic.
fact. The US has always been in the fray, trying to find some...
They have, but sometimes, you know, they were playing a little bit of background work, but this time they have put their footstep where this time, I think the Doha, they were involved, but not actively involved like this one. And I hope that this one can work better.
I don't want to switch this conversation, but there have been accusations of, you know, individual country interest because of the minerals that are there. Perhaps in the course of the conversation, we will get to that. Let's bring in Modesta again and just take it from there. The FDLR, for our viewers, please, that is the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda. That's just the acronym that they use. Are they genuine active threat that justifies Rwanda's stated concerns? Or has it become perhaps a justification that can be invoked indefinitely, regardless of what Congo does?
Yes, 100%. But before proceeding to that side, there are some simple points that I would like to clarify. There is still, I can say that the process now is out of the road. When you see how they have been shifting the processes, for me, I believe it would actually be properly tackled if they kept it in Africa, either in Angola or even in Doha, as it was before. But up to date, when you check around, it's like the global north is actually now wanted to monopolize or even have full control of what is happening. And when this problem will not be put or seen in a proper perspective, I am pessimistically seeing that nothing would actually be done. By now, even if they are saying that they're going to implement the Doha process, when you see clearly, they only shift and they are only using this very simple tip of just going to the field so as to verify about the violation of the agreements. But when you see it is even being done now that the M23 have actually pushed or is trying to push back the forces of the government. It was not done before, which shows that it is like the unfairness of trying to create a blockade against the movement or the M23. Therefore, when you see it's like in the background, there is a deep relationship or even collaboration between the United States and the government of Kinshasa, which of course is related to the economic, deal that the United States signed with the government of Kinshasa. Because according to the reports and based on the information that I have from the field, the government have always been attacking Minembwe and some other corners of the Kivu, and those are actually the violation of the ceasefire or the processes of the accords. So I can see there is some imbalances of power because the government is still believing it can use mercenaries, black water. It can also even maybe use some American support. It can even have time to prepare properly so as to kick out the M23, which is now unfortunately progressing. So coming back to the matter of the FDLR, yes, it is really the threat to the government of Rwanda. And to me, who have even been in the region for so long, it is still my homeland. And actually, I am personally born in that region of the eastern part of Kivu. Myself, I'm born in Congo. So the reality is that even this war, it's not actually created by Congo. When you see, it is simply the genocidal ideology which is now being used or it's like the government of Congo is now supporting the FDLR. It's not the government actually of Congo fighting against Rwanda. It's the government of Congo supporting the FDLR to maybe topple the power of Kagame in Rwanda. When you check around, that ideology is still around. And when you see on social media, it's the relatives of the genocide perpetrators in Europe and elsewhere always applauding, oh, we're going to top the power, we're going to top the power. And this is being done by Burundi jointly with the government of Congo. it is being officially testified by the FDLR senior officers who have been captured on the front lines of war in Goma and in Congo. They are now in Rwanda. Some surrendered, others were captured on the ground. Themselves, those who were in charge of intelligence, and everybody, maybe investigative journalists can go and investigate about that. They have been testifying. They are embedded in the force of the government. They have support from Burundi. They have been training for several years. Since 1994, their children, all of them have been enrolled in the army. So it's still a threat.
All right, let's come to you, Abigail, and just in my opening statements, I talked about the fact that two parallel agreements, you're running parallel. The agreements are in force. The Washington deal between Congo and Rwanda and the M23 wasn't part of that discussion. And then you have, on the other hand, Congo and the M23 making that deal. Does having this seemingly disconnected process running parallel undermine the peace process? Abigail, if you can hear me, please. Okay, Nixon, if you can take on that question.
Yeah, before I think I go to that question, let me just touch briefly on the issue of the FDLR, and it's an issue that I quite struggle to deal with in the sense that, one, you have to look at the geographical landscape of the Eastern DRC, and we have to understand the current location which the said FDLR is located is controlled by M23/RDF ally. And then it begs the question, who have to disarm the FDLR?
Okay, I think we have a challenge with Nixon's connection.
If indeed they exist in the Congo. Okay. Has a report produced. Yes.
Go ahead.
The UN, a group of experts. The report was in 2010, 2013, and 2014, giving the figure of the FDLR around 1,870 plus, if I'm not mistaken. Three, then you have to look at the...
Okay, well, when we get back to Isaac, we'll let him finish his thoughts, but let's move on to, when we get back to Nixon, I beg your pardon, we'll have him repeat his thought. But I was rushing to get to Isaac to have him talk to us about the expanded joint verification mechanism that is now in Minembwe. I hope I get that pronunciation correct. What more can you tell us about this mechanism? We know that this is their first outing. But do they have any powers per se? If they find evidence on the ground, who do they report to? And what happens next if they do find evidence of violation or anything?
So what we have to understand by this expanded joint verification mechanism is that they are backed by the International Conference on the Great Lakes and also the African Union. Then they have logistical support from the UN and stabilization mission in the DRC. So their work is to make sure that they provide observation to see and verify. Maybe when you report that there has been an airstrike or there has been a violent attack, there has been a bomb explosion at this end, or there has been some reported attack at this very location. And this mission is supposed to go there, verify the account in which they receive that information, and then report to these various institutions. The AU is involved, the UN is involved. That is why the Secretariat has been established, so that the Secretariat will coordinate these informations and make sure that they are able to deal with them. But the mandate given to this expanded joint verification mechanism is not to deal with who breaches the ceasefire or who does what. They are not supposed. They are only supposed to verify and report on what is happening on the ground, so that the AU and the UN and the people who are involved, the Qatar and the US, will be able to engage the parties as to the next way forward and to make sure that they are able to stick to the agreement. So the mechanism is designed to investigate claims, allegation in person, to know which party breached the agreement first. This helps to hold the parties accountable in their breach. So they said that they were supposed to go there yesterday, which is 24th. So I have not received any report. I have not seen any report as to when they went to verify what the M23 was reporting, to say that the government have launched a strike. What is the outcome of the work that they have done? And that will also borders on whether or not the parties will trust each other. So the expanded joint verification team is also made up of both the DRC government people, M23 individuals, and also the AFC, which is also another group which I fight jointly with the M23. So all of them are involved. So it's a team together with them, with involvement of the AU and the UN support missions, to make sure that they do a proper work and a work that parties can have trust in it.
Online, there's been no update as to that mission there. Perhaps in the coming days we will get some update. Let's go on a short break. When we come back, I will be asking about the ceasefire and penalty. If the M23 or the Congolese army violates the ceasefire tomorrow, what happens if this verification mechanism is just to report? Stay with us. DR Congo and M23 and efforts at peace. A roadmap is out. We're looking at it and the possibility of success. My guests are still with us. Before the break, I put a question, and that question is actually to you, Modesty. Modesty, if you can hear me. Yes.
Yes,
do you need me to recap the question?
You were talking about knowing who attacked or violated the...
Yeah. If M23 or the Congolese army violates the ceasefire tomorrow, what actually happens? Is there any sanction? If the mechanism is just a report?
Even before, when you see the leaders of the M23, the leaders of AFC M23, the leaders of Rwanda have been sanctioned. Even before the implementation of these extended joint verification mechanisms. But the side of the government, which was accused of have even violated the ceasefire before, have never been sanctioned. Even when you check about the agreements that were signed in the United States between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, there was actually two main points. The lifting of the defensive measures by the side of Rwanda, but also the neutralization of the FDLR. But the government of Congo, what it did, have not opted to neutralizing the FDLR. They signed something like a deal. They signed another thing which is very different from what they have signed in the United States. So I don't think punishment or even penalties would be applied fairly. They can either be applied or not, because it will depend on the one holding the power or controlling or being the rule around. Otherwise, if it was about violating ceasefire, it's been done before than today, because the people of Minembwe, the Twirwaneho, it's the coalition. Those are fighters protecting the civilians in Minembwe. They have been under attacks of drones for several times, but now that they have chased out the forces of the coalition of the Wazalendo Burundian forces and the force of the government out of Minembwe. It's now that this extended joint verification mechanisms land in Minembwe. They actually were there yesterday. The war is now very far. It's near the regions of a little bit far from Minembwe. So actually, for me, it's been realistically these forces have been have been on the side of the government rather than being on the side of the rebels. So I don't know what to say because almost all the leaders of the M23 actually are under sanctions. I don't know even whoever else will be sanctioned on the side of the rebels. The senior leaders of the RDF are under sanctions. Leaders of the M23, some are even under the death penalty of the side of the government of Kinshasa. They also had the sanctions from the United States. So the only side which actually left to be maybe sanctioned would be the side of the Kinshasa. And again, our colleague here said that maybe the release of prisoners have been done. No. On the side of the M23, they have presented the list having more than 700 detainees from the side of the M23, which are detained in Kinshasa. Some have even been dying in the prison. None of them have actually been released. The people who were currently released, none of them were on that list that M23 submitted. And unfortunately, some were from Uganda, which were maybe confused, like having the morphology of Tutsis, were also arrested, but they were from Uganda. There's none of the people who were on the list that the M23 submitted that the Kinshasa released, and nobody talks about that. So as you can see, then it's a little bit unfair.
I'm just
really following the same line.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the optimism you are showing us in the course of this conversation. But let's look at the humanitarian situation. We're talking millions displaced inside the country, over 1 million more who have fled borders. And then you have those tens of millions facing severe hunger. If we have Abigail, do we still have Abigail? Okay, Nixon then, how does that scale of suffering that's been shown everywhere change the urgency or the politics of these talks?
I don't think that there is any concerted effort that look at the humanitarian crisis that has happened in the DRC, particularly in the east of part since not only the current M23, but since 1996. You're looking at children dying of malnutrition, many people dying because of displacement, or either preventable diseases because of lack of access to critical medicines and so on. So, in my view, I think this is a question that has been sidelined in the talk because whether the joint verification mechanism comes in, but it does not look at the humanitarian affairs that many of these Congolese citizens are facing. And that there lies the problem. It lies the problem because many people are dying, not only in Minembwe. You go to Masisi, you go to Ruchuru, you go to Walikale, you go to areas such as Pinga, deep down in many of the areas which are forests. The same problem, and this is cut across not just only the rebel-held areas, but also the government control because of a lack of accountability on the political leaders in the Congo, both in the rebel-held or controlled areas or in the government side. And I think, for me, begs the question: what is the strategic point here on the part of both the government in Kinshasa and the rebels in serving adequately the people of the DRC and lifting them out of the sheer poverty and the desperation that they find themselves while fighting. And that is the problem, because what we see, rather, in my view, is a lack of political will to end the conflict in Eastern DRC, not only on the part of government, not only on the part of the rebel, but also on those involved from the region, including the government of Rwanda, the government of Uganda, Burundi as well, and the other regional bodies that have been assigned to end this conflict. Remember, this is not the first time we haven't joined the verification mechanism to look at the end, the cessation of the conflict, and to verify who is breaching what according to the various agreements that have been signed. Those agreements are countless, and if you look at it in the fine lines of many agreements, they basically a repetition of so many agreements that have been signed since the Lusaka Accord one that was signed in 1997 after the first Congo War. So, in my view, I think the humanitarian crisis in Eastern DRC is going to continue because there is a lack of political will on both parties.
I think, just an aside, I couldn't help but think that that is at the heart of most of our problems, political will from our leaders to genuinely, fight through what is needed to give us peace. But let me come back to you, Isaac. I alluded to the fact that there were concerns about the motive of these countries that are stepping in to try and mediate. We know for a fact that Eastern Congo sits on mineral wealth estimated in the trillions of dollars, and at the heart of the new age we are going through in terms of energy worldwide. So is the current diplomatic push genuinely about protecting Congolese civilians, or is it in large part about who controls that supply chain? We have to talk about this. Isaac, please.
Yes, definitely. As we say in our local dialect, that whoever prepares the food does not leave the kitchen without tasting some of them. So everyone has their own motive of coming into the table and helping to resolve this matter. So the US, Qatar, Togo, the AU, and all of them, AU may have maybe their primary objective is to make sure that there is an African country which is peaceful. But US and other people coming in, yes, they hold some unmatched financial capacities and other things that you have a resource that they want, but they cannot get those resources when the conflicts escalate and they keep going on, because they cannot. Because now, if you look at the Eastern DRC, they produce a lot of cocaine and this cobalt and other things that people cannot access them, or even M23 have taken over, set some of the pits and some of the places, and even taxing the individuals who are mining these minerals. And if they are able to make sure that all these issues are solved, the institutions are standardized, we have good institutions working to implement this thing. They may not benefit directly, but their companies, their investment, their people may come in to invest, which will not benefit to the United States or Qatar. So they are all looking at expanding their trade partnership. And now with the changes in the geopolitics in the world, and everyone is looking for where they can also get resources from. So they will not come to the table just without any benefit. So obviously, there will be benefit for them. But if there will be benefit for them and we can have DRC being peaceful, that is also a fair deal for us on that side. So we are looking at making sure that we move from we get a negative peace, and if we are able to get negative peace within DRC, we move from negative peace to positive peace, where institutions will be able to work. There will be government institutions, there will be public institutions, there will be electoral system where everyone can be represented. And one thing that we have to also remember is that citizenship issue in the DRC needs to also be resolved. And all these things, if they are able to help and making sure that these things are done. I think if they also benefit from what they have been able to do. I don't see anything wrong there. But definitely, all these people coming to the table to help, they have their own motives of doing that, which may not be clear as it stands now, but later they have something that they may get from it.
I actually have a follow-up question, but I'm looking at the time and to prioritize some other issues. So I'll just go to Modeste. You can help us with this. The December agreement opened the door to American mining interest in Congo. And we understand, confirm me if I'm wrong, Congolese lawyers have already gone to court over parts of it. Does tying peace to mineral access actually help resolve this conflict, or does it just change who profits from the war economy around it?
That's obvious. It's in the United States because the Kinshasa said you can take whatever you want, but take out for us these rebels, which is a very wrong way of solving the problem. Because that's not uprooting the bitter roots of the issue in Congo. And I used to say actually that if there was actually a goodwill from the Congo leadership, these problems can be solved within only 1 month or even 1 week. Why? Because it is simply uprooting the FDLR between who are embedded in the government forces, and also solving completely the problems with the M23. What do they actually advocate for? They have refugees across the region. More than 400,000 in Uganda, more than 500,000 in Kenya, more than 100,000 in Rwanda. Others are now in Norway, America, and everywhere. So those people are saying, we don't want to be kept refugees for more than 30 years. We are Congolese. And currently, the defeated president candidate, Martin Fayulu, was obviously and officially saying that in Tutsis, there's no such Tutsis or Banyamulenge Congolese. Yet, they are at their lands have their language names. It's a kind of tribalistic, which is structural. It's really of the government of not really considering what it's supposed to do. And instead of tackling or uprooting those bitter roots existing in the country, somebody is simply renting and hiring mercenaries and maybe inviting the international people to come and then pretending solving the problem. It won't be. That's the problem. Maybe they will defeat them 23 now, but maybe tomorrow we shall have them 24, 20, whatever. And currently, as I have been saying, if this problem was controlled and maybe solved by Africans, there are people who know this problem properly more than anyone else, like the former president of Nigeria, the former president of Nigeria. He has been involved in this problem by the time of even seeing the CNDP. Angola knows that properly. But because of these leaders, like maybe the government of Kinshasa is being manipulated by these the international people who want, international countries which wants interest from the country, and then, of course, keep the problem there ever. Yet, if the FDLR were uprooted or separated from the government forces, and solve this problem of the refugees, we can't see that Rwanda or even any other country coming in Congo. And you've been talking about the refugees. Up to that, the refugee camps which were actually near the Goma and elsewhere around, by the time the M23 took the city, the control of Kivu, all the refugees have been repatriated to their lands, to where they came from. The only problem, of course, they have is poverty, of course, which is there. So the current problem is simply the Banyamulenge who have been suckled by the Wazalendo, the government force and Burundi, because they are still considered non-citizen. That's the only problem, actually. And instead of tackling that, people are just, going around trying to say it's Rwanda. Yet, Rwanda itself says the only problem you have in Congo is the FDLR. And those who have submitted themselves or captured the tool from the front, themselves satisfying that they have senior officers even within the leadership of the army, the national army, even in the security guards of the president, of the current president. So that's the problem.
I'm sorry, we're time pressed. So I'll just go quickly to Nixon. We now have the US, Qatar, Togo, the African Union Commission, and Switzerland all involved as mediator. Is that threat really a genuine strength, or does having so many hands on the wheel make it harder to hold anyone accountable? As quickly as you can, please.
Well, to answer the question straight, the answer is no. The involvement of those organizations does not help anything, Qatar or because if you have to look at the history, and I think context matter. And I've been following Modeste with a keen interest because we both come from the region, and Modeste understands too well that the talking point here by Kigali have been citizenship. But if you look at the constitution of the DRC is clear. If you look at the geostrategic interest that both countries have within the global politics, both Rwanda and the DRC, in terms of mineral resources, one cannot take a simplistic view of saying it's about refugees, far beyond problems of the DRC than what we think. And therefore, the mediation.
Okay, Nixon, your network is really not really helping. Quickly, we'll come back to you if we have maybe a few seconds more.
Mediation in Nigeria. So those are the...
Okay. Isaac, in 30 seconds, I know when we started, you expressed optimism that, you know, this roadmap is something we should give a chance. But genuinely, is this a turning point for the conflict, the war? If you say conflict, it's like something mild, the war in that region. Is this a genuine process in your view?
Yes. Yes, I still maintain that I'm still optimistic about the process to end the conflict or the war, as you put it. But I want to see there are certain people that must be on the table. Rwanda should not be left on the table where they are doing a separate agreement with Rwanda and doing separate agreement with the M23 and the DRC. All these parties must be on the table. And as Modesty said, we need to also look more into African-led solutions, so that because Africans understand ourselves better, we know what it takes and what we need to do for ourselves as Africans. So we should look more within than depending so much on the external people for help. So
thank you very much for bringing that up, because I did have a question on African-led mediation, if we're just playing along or we're taking, you know, real initiative. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Isaac, it's been a pleasure. Modesty, thank you. I get to know how to pronounce your name properly in your tone. And we lost Dr. Abi. Sorry?
Thank you for having me. It's
our pleasure. Nixon Katembo, thank you very much. And in absentia, we thank Dr. Abigail Mubambi for obliging to speak with us.